Ultimate Custom Night features a wide variety of characters, but one thing they all have in common is that they are all from the Five Nights at Freddy's franchise. But what if you went to another franchise, like let's say Poppy Playtime, and added their characters to Ultimate Custom Night? Well, in this video, that's exactly what we are going to be doing. I'll be going over every single character from Poppy Playtime and coming up with a unique mechanic for each one. And I'll also be talking about how this would affect 50/20 overall. So without further ado, don't forget to like the video and let's get into it. So for this video, I'm going to start with the chapter 1 characters and move through the chapters in chronological order. So without further ado, let's start with Huggy Wuggy. Huggy Wuggy is probably the most recognizable character in Poppy Playtime, and for his mechanic, I think it would be cool to make him have a mechanic relating to the vents. So here's the idea. Huggy Wuggy will bang in the vents when he's approaching the office, or scream when he's approaching one of the 2 doors, and you need to check which vent or door they are at with listening to the panning of the sounds you hear. If you don't shut the appropriate door or vent within 5 seconds, then you will die. To be honest, he wouldn't actually be that bad to deal with on top of everything else, but he would require you to be locked in. Poppy Playtime is technically a helper, but she also betrays us in chapter 4. So the idea I have for her is quite simple. She will sit on the desk, and if you click her, she can offer you some help, like fully winding the music box, or preventing Funtime Fox's showtime, which could be really helpful. But if she decides not to help you, then you would be killed by the prototype. This is just a fun little addition that wouldn't really change the game all that much if you ignored her, but if you did decide to click on her, she could either make or break your entire game. Mummy Longlegs is the main villain of the second chapter, and for their mechanic, it actually came from a comment on my last video. So here's the idea for her mechanic. Mummy Longlegs will either say hide or seek throughout the night. When she says hide, quickly put on the mask or she will kill you. If she says seek, cycle through the cameras until you see her, then stare at her for 2 seconds. This would really make the night a lot more difficult, especially if you have to deal with someone else while actually dealing with her. Bunso Bunny is the first of the 3 minigame enemies in chapter 2, and has a really cool mechanic that we could use. So here's the idea. When you hear his symbol start crashing, you need to find the 4 coloured buttons on the camera and click the correct colour that's flashing before the crashing turns into a jump scare. This would make 50/20 really difficult, since having to deal with Bunzo would be super tricky, and due to Music Man also having crashing symbols, you would really need to figure out which one is actually making the sound, or else you would just die to, not knowing who's who. The Mini Huggies are the second minigame enemy from chapter 2, and for them, I have a really simple idea. The Mini Huggies will appear at either of the duck entrances in the room, and you need to click on them within 10 seconds of them spawning, or you will die. A simple change, but nothing too extreme. PJ Pugapilla is my personal favourite of the chapter 2 characters, and in my mind, we could make this character really cool. So, here's the idea. From time to time, you will hear PJ Pugapilla's music start to play, and when you do, you need to wait until the music stops and hide with the mask. If you fail to do this, PJ Pugapilla will kill you. This could really add to the difficulty if he spawns at a crucial time in the night. Kissy Missy is one of the more interesting of the Poppy Playtime characters, and for her mechanic, I think we can come up with something quite interesting. When we hear Kissy start crying, you need to go to her camera and look at her for a few seconds to comfort her, I guess you could say. If you fail to do this, she would get upset and come for you instead. Simple mechanic that could make the Hot Night card, same thing as everything else. The prototype is the big bad of Poppy Playtime, even though we don't know that much about them, at least at the time of recording this video. So for their mechanic, it's going to be pretty simple. If you see their hand on the camera outside one of the 2 doors or in one of the vents from the office, close the door to make them leave. Pretty simple, but they will have a second chance to kill you due to our next character. Ollie is pretty much the Poppy Playtime version of both Gregory and the phone guy. Plus, they are technically the prototype as well, so I think he could be like a reverse phone guy. When you see Ollie's mute call button, do not click it or else you'd be killed by the prototype. This would be absolutely insane because it means you'd have to actually make sure that it's either phone guys or Ollies that you're clicking, and the way you could tell them apart would be one would be green, I guess. Mr. Light could potentially be the most difficult character in Ultimate Custom Night if we added her, because my idea for her mechanic is insane. Mr. Light would slowly move throughout the building if you aren't looking at her, and if she makes it to your office, you would just straight up die. So you need to constantly check on her throughout the night to make sure that she never makes it to your office. She would basically turn into an insanely difficult version of Foxy, which is wild. The Smiling Critters are a bunch of little guys, and for their mechanic, it's quite simple. From time to time, a random smiling critter will walk across your desk like Bonnet, and you just need to click on them before they jump scare you. This could definitely add to the difficulty, but not too much. Dog Day is a personal favourite from Chapter 3, and for their mechanic, it's super simple. He will be hanging in the office on the wall, and whenever he looks up at the player, you need to go either into the camera or hide in the mask like with Golden Freddy. This wouldn't make the game too difficult, except he wouldn't only spawn on camera drops, so it's like if Golden Freddy just appeared randomly from time to time. Catnap is the main villain of Chapter 3, and for his mechanic, we could make him more of a distraction rather than an actual threat. And here's what I mean by that. When Catnap spawns, he will send red mist throughout the entire building, and cause threats to appear and disappear at random, meaning that Springtrap could possibly show up at the vent when he's not there, and not show up at the vent when he is there, basically being a massive distraction. However, if you could find him on the camera and look at Catnap for like 2 consecutive seconds, he would disappear for a little bit and, you'd be able to figure everything else out. This could really make the game hard if you can't find Catnap quickly enough, and would definitely throw off the main 50-20 mode strategy. And now we move on to the Chapter 4 characters. But before we go on, if you're enjoying the video so far, I would appreciate it if you just liked the video, as it helps out a ton, and if you want to see more content like this, be sure to subscribe. I'm personally thanking every subscriber at 100k. But with that out of the way, let's get on to Chapter 4's characters. Yarnaby is our first of the Chapter 4 characters, and for me, his mechanic wouldn't be anything special. I would make it that Yarnaby would appear in the office, and you need to put on the heater before his mouth fully opens, which would be a fine mechanic for some extra difficulty, but nothing special. Also, for why I said the heater, well... yeah. Doughy the Doughman is probably a fan favourite of Chapter 4, and for his mechanic, I would have a very simple idea that would allow a very underutilised tool to actually be used, and that is the power AC. Doughy is affected by really cold temperatures, so I figured we could use this for a mechanic. The idea is simple. From time to time, Doughy's arms will slowly move into the room to grab you, and you need to turn on the power AC in order to scare him off. Unlike Nightmare Chica, he can actually show up multiple times in a night. This would both make the AC actually have a use, and allow Doughy to have a unique mechanic, as well as making you need to use the AC through 50-20, which would be a really difficult challenge to manage. The Doctor was probably one of the fan favourites as well in Chapter 4, however, he doesn't really have a use in the game he's in, so let's make him cool in this game. So here's the idea. The Doctor will appear on the cameras, and if you stare at him for too long, he will make every single character twice as aggressive as they usually are. Basically, he would up everyone's AI from 20 to 40, which would make the game really hard if you were to mess up, and could possibly have a mode where you try to make the game as hard as possible as an extra challenge. I'd also make it that the Doctor's ability would stack up if you kept messing up. Imagine dealing with like 100 AI. Babachops is another one of the Chapter 4 characters, and probably the worst of all the characters. And for their mechanic, I would probably use a mechanic from the teaser, where he's similar to an ambush predator. So here's the idea. Babachops will appear out one of the 4 corners of the room, and you need to click on him before the next camera flip, or else you will die. Which would make the game a bit tricky, since he would be very easy to miss if you weren't paying attention. Pianosaurus was done extremely dirty in that game, so let's try and fix that in our version. Pianosaurus will show up in the room with a piano in their hand, and once they are in the office, the piano will flash a quick pattern that you need to repeat in order to scare Pianosaurus off. If you get the combo wrong, or flip the camera without completing it, then you will get jump scared. I think this would make the entire 50-20 loop insanely hard, since you wouldn't be able to coin farm or 0-frame flip until you complete his piano puzzle. So he finally gets a use. Justice for Pianosaurus. And finally, we have made it to our very last character. A character who didn't make it into any of the actual Poppy Playtime games, but you may know was heavily featured in Project Playtime. A very dead game that I wish was still around, because it was actually awesome. And part of that was due to the character Boxy Boo. Boxy Boo is this Jack-in-the-Box style monster we could definitely use for our last mechanic. Here's the idea. Boxy Boo will be in the office slowly winding down and peeking out of his box. So you need to turn the hand crank in order to set him back, which would force the player to deal with 2 separate music boxes, one on the cameras and one in the office. And it would make the entire night really difficult, especially while dealing with Nightmare on at the same time. And with that, we have finally gone over every Poppy Playtime character. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and maybe I'll make a part 2. Thanks for watching, be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.